Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this morning, when the video shall reach you, we are going to look at the exciting topic. Will Holness crush Golding again tomorrow? That is a question that many people are asking in light of the election, Jamaica's election that will be held tomorrow, September 3rd. Now, tomorrow could decide Jamaica's future. Will Andrew Michael Holness, crush Mark Jefferson Golding again? Or is a PNP surprise waiting? Let's break it down. And that is important for you to understand. Will Mark Golding, um, you know, pronounce or hit Andrew Holness with a big surprise? Now, we know that Mark Golding and Andrew Holness have been at it since, 2020 and before, as they were vying for the position in which Holness crushed him in the 2020 elections. I think that the JLP copped 49 of the 63 seats in Parliament, if I remember well. So Prime Minister Andrew Holness then in 2020 gave Golding a huge crush and won that election by a landslide. And that's the question, will he be repeating that history in this election, in the election that will be held tomorrow? Now, tomorrow is going to be one of the most consequential elections that we've ever had. We can see that the momentum is building and that they're busing their supporters from one location to the other. And I heard this GOP supporter, shouting out in Runaway Bay in St. Anne that don't be surprised at the huge numbers of people in Montego Bay who are actually voting for who you will see, a large crowd that you'll see in Montego Bay, as many of many of the members in the crowd, or the huge, gigantic spectators that you'll see in Montego Bay, or that you would have seen in Montego Bay on Sunday, many of them were bussed from Kingston, as she suggested. She was blurting out on TikTok. Now, the same could be true for the other side, for the JLP, that many of the spectators that you saw at their mass rally were also bussed from another location to that particular location, because there was a sea of people in these locations at these mass rallies held on Sunday. And I can see even up to last night, 10 o'clock and beyond, 10 p.m. in the night, you had, different constituencies holding different rallies and ensuring that their bases are covered. So this is a very consequential election, and the politicians are doing their job. Now, we have a broken system in terms of our polls. Many people, just like the politics, are not believing in the institution of polling. They don't believe that the polls are rendering a realistic view of what is happening in Jamaica with regard to the political landscape and who will win. In fact, I think it was on Sunday that the Gleaner, or before, the Gleaner carried a piece, a story, in which it was suggesting, well, it was Don Anderson, actually. It was Don Anderson who wrote an article in the Sunday Gleaner. It was like, why wasn't I polled? And when I saw the title, I thought, why wasn't I polled? Who is Don Anderson talking about? Can he be polled? And he's a pollster? However, he wasn't talking about himself. He was referring to people who actually were asking him, why was I not polled? And why are you just suggesting that a small sample of 1,300 people are sufficient to determine what over 2 million people think in Jamaica? And he was sort of defending his point that that is how his polls are set up, to have 1,000 to 1,500 people or thereabout, and that he could not poll. His polls are not much bigger. But that is the weakness of the polls that we're seeing, that they just have these small samples, and from these small samples, they're determining the likes and the dislikes of the Jamaican people. And you can't do that. That is unscientific. And even the greatest sample would not even give you a full picture. It still would not render a correct picture of what is happening in the real world. But if you're going to do something and you call it science, well, do something to the best of your ability. And that is not what the Dionne Anderson poll and to a large extent, the Blue Dot poll are doing in Jamaica. Now, the fact of the matter also, when we look at what is happening in light of the situation with the polls, they are also partisan. So Dionne Anderson, many people align him with the PNP party. The Blue Dot poll is aligned with the JLP. In recent times, Dionne Anderson was trying to be objective, so sometimes he had the PNP was leading, sometimes he had that the JLP was slightly ahead. But who knows who is really ahead when our institutions are broken? The JLP's Blue Dot, however, doesn't seem to be objective or pretend to be. And is it owned by Nationwide? Because sometimes I hear them saying the Nationwide's Blue Dot poll. Is it owned by Cliff Hughes? Is that Blue Dot poll Cliff Hughes inspired, don't funded? I don't know. Somebody could respond to me. I don't know if it is funded by Cliff Hughes. But everybody knows that Cliff Hughes is JLP. He aligns himself with the JLP party, which is not very good as a journalist to do. Now, it doesn't mean, therefore, that he cannot vote for the JLP or have a preference, a party preference. He can. He's a human being, and he's obligated to doing that, if he so desires. However, to express it and to allow it to color your political commentaries is something he's treading on a dangerous road. In fact, I heard Cliff Hughes saying also, I think it was yesterday, that the PNP has not to date, rather, not up to date, but to date, the PNP has not funded any of his media advertisements because, I guess because they understand that he's aligned with the JLP. So, but why would they? And I would say vice versa for the Jamaica Gleaner group. Why would the JLP, or perhaps they have funded advertisements of the other side? Perhaps, I don't know. But, Cliff Hughes was suggesting and was harping on the fact that he has not received, an iota of funding, financial support in terms of ads from the PNP side. Something that was interesting, but he was bragging that he was surviving nonetheless. Thought that was very interesting. Now, so sometimes the Blue Dot polls shows that, always shows that Andrew Holness is ahead, while the Dionne Anderson poll shows that the PNP is sometimes ahead and the JLP sometimes gaining a footage. Now, we know that given what we're seeing, Dr. Andrew Holness is the more popular of the two. And for many reasons, he is in power for the past 10 years. And he has not just been on the political landscape he was prime minister before, after going limited office. And he was a politician, a young politician, before he was Minister of Education in 2007. And we knew of him. Jamaica knows of Andrew Holness. Since then, even after going limited office and the JLP was voted out of power in 2011, we know that Andrew Holness came back on the stage, on the political landscape, in terms of in the eyes of Jamaicans, when he was actually fighting for his life, for his political leadership, because after they lost the election in 2011, there was a political combat, internal political combat within the JLP hierarchical structure, in which you had the likes of Chris Tufton and others who wanted to gain leadership of the party. And Andrew Holness challenged them. Jay challenged him, and he won. Andrew Holness won that challenge. So Andrew Holness has cemented himself. He has earned his spot as the de facto president of the JLP, and also he won the election, or the elections, both elections. He won two elections, one in 2016 and another in 2020. And since then, he has been having a seamless success on the Jamaican political landscape. For whatever it is, he supervised and headed and presided over the pandemic in 2019, and people think that he did a great job. 2020 that was, sorry. And people thought, or they still think, that he did a magnificent job. Whether I agree with that, that is not what I'm suggesting. I'm just telling you what the pulse of the nation is and what people generally think of him. Not all people, but he seems to have garnered some level of popularity from the way in which he handled the pandemic of 2020 and beyond. Okay. Since then, also, he has sat on many international multilateral organizations. For example, the G7. He had been invited to the G7, to the G20, and he has been tasked to preside over different committees at the United Nations. So Dr. Andrew Holness is no lightweight. He's a heavyweight. He's a political heavyweight. Now, it's not because I'm saying that he is my preferred candidate, because obviously he's not, but I have to give you the facts as we see them and as we're reading them from the media, right? Now, the fact of the matter is, and not only the media, but, we can see what is happening, because he did go to the G7 meetings, he did attend the G20 meetings, he did sit on many committees. So Andrew Holness also, last year, was it last September, we were informed that Dr. Andrew Holness, Dr. Andrew Michael Holness, obtained his PhD from a very prestigious university in the United States. And he obtained it, he went to graduation in May, so he's in fact a doctor. For those of you who are suggesting that he is not, you can go on YouTube and you can look at his graduation ceremony that he attended. I think the school is in Boston, right? And you can see that he received his certificate. He spoke also at the graduation ceremony. So those of the haters who think that he doesn't have his PhD, you need to reflect and to stop being delusional, because he did. So Andrew Holness has really done well politically, financially, and I would say in terms of his media popularity, I think he has also done well. Many allegations have been heard at him, and yet still he seems to have ridden over them. Well, I'm sure he has not gotten over all the hurdles in terms of his corruption charges and allegations, but he has dealt well with them. He has been able to stand up to his various detractors. Now, when we look also at the political debates, many of you have different, sort of analyses, and, and we are subjective in terms of our analysis of the political debates. I thought he won the last time. People think that Mark Golding won, but I think that Andrew Holness really was more measured, showed a statesman-like disposition during his delivery, and he showed that he had experience. Right? He wasn't short of experience. Of course, Mark Golding handled himself well too and was quite composed, but showed that he lacked the experience, and he was just making some promises, some of which, or many of which, we know that are not going to be feasible, are not going to be practical in light of what we're seeing happening on the global horizon. So we can see that these two men are vouching for power. One is more experienced, one is, to a large extent, less experienced. Now, I want to know the whole matter of the voter sentiment and social media trends. I think that, it balances. There are some people who are for Dr. Andrew Holness, but you can see that a wide majority on social media seem to be, vouching for Dr. Andrew Holness. You have your PNP supporters too, and they're there, but Dr. Andrew Holness's presence, social media presence, I think is much more pronounced and much more ubiquitous than we see for the People's National Party. That is my view. Where I now see where the PNP might have an edge over him, one, of course, his corruption charges still hangover came. He has not clarified those. The fact that his statutory declaration has not yet been certified, right? Whether or not that will gain traction with the voters, I don't think so. And as Robinson, he wrote an article for the paper this morning. I forgot his name, the journalist Robinson. I forgot his first name. Now, he was suggesting this morning, and he's right, that Jamaicans don't care about corruption. What they care about is that the party is doing something to aid them personally in their lives. They're not looking at the development collectively as a nation. They're looking for their personal development. So the jobs that they're going to be getting, the spoils and the benefits that they also will be obtaining, these are things that they pay attention to, not to the fact that our country is edging on the precipice of decline. All right, they're not looking at that. They're more looking at the fact our people are more concerned about being able to survive on a personal level. That is what they will on election day vote for that person who enables them to survive personally. And some will not survive personally, but they're doing it because they're followers of the others who are doing it, and they just like to follow the wind and go with the flow. That is to run with the current, as it as if it were, as you know, as it is, if you will. That's what I was looking for. But the fact of the matter is that whether we like it or not, Dr. Andrew Michael Holness has earned himself a place in the annals of Jamaican history. He has. Whether he is going to be going down as a leader who has developed and who is responsible for the most, who has contributed the most to national development is another question. I leave that up to the political historians and some other political commentators. So I would like to know if, based on what I have said, in light of what I have said, if Andrew Holness is going to be able to crush Dr. Mark Golding another time. Will he crush him? Will he win big tomorrow in the general election? I think so. But possibly because elections are a lot of times unpredictable, and they behave at the stock market, and anything can change even tonight, even on tomorrow, something can change. And the people decide, what if you have a huge voter turnout? We don't know. But we don't know if we will have a huge voter turnout and if that will sway in favor of Andrew Holness or it will swing in favor of Mark Golding. Okay, that is yet to be. But one of the challenges too that the PNP has is that they lost a lot of seats in the last election. It will take a lot of time to really build back their seats and to get back all those seats. Remember now that when the PNP lost the election in 1980, even though they didn't contest the election of 1983, but it took them almost 9 years to regain and to be able to win in a landslide in 1989 when Michael Manley came back to power. We're just, 4 or 5 years short of the 2020 general elections, right? 5 years. So I don't know if the PNP will be able to regain its momentum. Remember now it's a divided party too. It's not yet fully united. And sometimes you can see even Mark Golding and Damon Crawford on the campaign trail, and you see that there is some tension there. It's not really a unified party. They are, they're pretending to be, because that's what they have to do to show their voters that they are together. But you can see that there is some amount of tension between both leaders, between Damon Crawford and Mark Golding. Now they put on a good front, and that is what they should do, because that is how games run. We cannot always be on one accord, because this is not religion, well, although it appears to be. Okay, but even in religion, because we live in a sinful world, people are not always on one accord. Okay, so that is the whole matter. And I think that Mark Golding, and the PNP, if they were to win tomorrow, they would have to put up a real big front and a heavy load they would have to carry to regain a lot of the seats that they lost in the last election held in 2020. Okay, so I think that on that basis, that's another victory that I would think would be given to the JLP, as they really won by a landslide in the last election. But anything can happen. And please let me know, who do you think will win? Who do you think will win tomorrow? Who do you think will win tomorrow? Maybe they will not win big, but who do you think is going to gain the edge tomorrow in our next election? Please let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the video can be shared with as many people on the platform. See you in another one. Ciao.